Hello and welcome back to the Wilderness Protocol. My name is Alex, and I'm an investigative journalist. For years, my work has led me to the frayed edges of the map, to places where the cell signal dies and the old woods still hold secrets. For the past 2 years, this channel has been my field journal for the stories often left untold. Lately, those whispers have all concerned the phenomenon known as Missing 411. Coined by former Detective David Paulides, the term describes baffling disappearances in our national parks. These aren't typical lost hiker scenarios. These cases are defined by their strangeness, their utter lack of clues. People vanish, often in an instant, from familiar areas. Search and rescue teams, some of the world's most skilled trackers, find nothing. No scent for dogs, no footprints, no gear. It's as if the ground swallowed them whole. The official explanation is always the same: unprepared, treacherous terrain. Succumb to the elements. Tidy answers for inexplicable events. But if you dig deeper, you find patterns. Clusters of disappearances around specific geographical features like granite boulder fields. Strange weather events hampering searches at critical moments. Toddlers who vanish and are found days later, miles away in impossible terrain, alive but unable to explain what happened. And there's another, more disturbing pattern: silence. The National Park Service, entrusted with protecting these lands, is notoriously tight-lipped. Requests for case files are met with bureaucratic stonewalling or outright refusals. It feels less like procedure and more like a deliberate effort to hide something. This brings me to my current location, a rental cabin on the edge of the vast, unsettling Ironwood National Park in the Pacific Northwest. I'm investigating a specific case: the disappearance of 8-year-old Sarah Carpenter from the park's Eagle Peak Trail 2 years ago. Her case is classic Missing 411. She was just feet ahead of her parents on a clear day. They looked down for a moment, looked up, and she was gone. No scream, no witnesses. The massive search found nothing. Not a ribbon from her hair, not a scuff mark from her pink hiking boots. I'm here to retrace her steps, speak with locals, and review the case files. I came to investigate the Park Service's silence, but a new, chilling thought has taken root. I don't think they're just being silent. I think they're watching me, and I have a terrible feeling they don't want me to find what I'm looking for. My first days in Ironwood were a study in contrasts. The park is breathtaking. Towering firs and ancient cedars create a canopy so dense the forest floor is in perpetual twilight. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. It feels primordial, but the beauty is matched by an intimidating scale. The sheer immensity of the wilderness is humbling. The silence is a presence, deep and resonant, making you feel like an intruder. My base is an isolated A-frame cabin. The first thing I did was spread the entire Sarah Carpenter case file across the dining table. The incident report, witness statements, topographical maps, and interview transcripts. I spent 48 hours immersed in the details. Sarah was with her parents, Mark and Elaine, both experienced hikers. The Eagle Peak Trail is rated moderate and was heavily trafficked on the Saturday she vanished. According to her father, Sarah was energetic, always skipping ahead but staying in sight. She had a ladybug whistle to blow if she couldn't see them. It was never blown. At approximately 2:15 p.m., Mark Carpenter bent to retie his bootlace. He estimated it took no more than 20 seconds. When he stood up, Sarah, who had been around a gentle bend about 50 feet ahead, was gone. They called her name, their calls turning to frantic shouts. Nothing. Within an hour, the first park ranger was on scene. Within 3 hours, a full-scale search was underway. It was textbook: grids, sweep teams, a helicopter with thermal imaging K9 units. And here, the first oddity appears. The seasoned search dogs couldn't find a scent. The report states the dogs were agitated and refused to track. It's a small detail buried in an appendix, but in the world of missing 411, it's a blazing red flag. On the third day, I drove to the ranger station. I wanted to get a feel for the place and perhaps engage a ranger in casual conversation. The station was a large, handsome log building designed to look welcoming. I asked a young, friendly ranger for a map and decided to test the waters. "It's beautiful country," I said, trying to sound like a tourist. "I think I remember reading about a little girl who went missing here a couple of years back. Did they ever find her?" The change was instantaneous. Her friendly smile became fixed, brittle. Her eyes went flat. "Sir, we have over 3 million visitors a year," she said, her voice a monotone of practiced deflection. "The safety of our guests is our top priority. We always advise hikers to stay on marked trails." It was a polished non-answer, a verbal dead end. As I turned to leave, I noticed another ranger by a 3D model of the park. He was older, late 50s, with a weathered face and a thick, graying mustache. He wasn't looking at the model, he was looking directly at me. His gaze was blank, patient, and deeply unsettling. I gave a slight nod. He didn't respond, just continued to watch me as I walked out. The drive back felt different. The trees seemed to be hiding something. The silence felt like surveillance. I dismissed it as paranoia, but the image of the ranger's stare stayed with me. The next day, the feeling intensified. Sitting on my porch, I saw a flash of a park service truck on a little-used service road nearby. It stopped for a moment, and I thought I saw the driver looking my way. Then it drove on. Coincidence, I told myself. Later, I set up my satellite modem, positioning the receiver dish on the porch railing. I spent an hour getting a solid connection, then went inside. When I came back out 10 minutes later, the dish had been moved slightly, just enough to break the link. The air was still. There were no tracks. The clamp was tight. It would take deliberate pressure to move it. My heart pounded. This wasn't in my head. Someone had been on my porch. Someone who didn't want me communicating. I scanned the silent, impassive woods, knowing with sickening certainty that I was not alone. The unblinking eye of the forest had a name: the National Park Service. After 2 days of feeling watched, I knew I couldn't stay in the cabin. My purpose was to investigate, and that meant going to the trail. The constant sense of surveillance galvanized me. If they were trying to scare me off, I must be getting close to something. I packed my day pack meticulously: water, food, first aid, GPS, a personal locator beacon, camera, and the search and rescue map. The drive to the Eagle Peak trailhead was tense. Every Park Service vehicle felt like a threat. The trailhead parking lot was a scene of cheerful normalcy, a stark contrast to my anxiety. This was where the carpenters had parked. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the trail. The first mile is deceptively pleasant. The path is wide, winding gently upward. I could hear other hikers, but as I climbed, the trail narrowed, the terrain grew rugged, and the other hikers thinned out. Soon, the only sounds were my own footsteps and the wind. According to the file, Sarah vanished 1.8 miles in, near a landmark, a large, lichen-covered granite outcropping resembling a sleeping bear. And then I saw it, a massive slab of gray granite hunched over the path. The air around it felt colder. This was the place. I sat on a log and reread the father's statement, visualizing the scene. The family rests. Sarah skips ahead to the next bend, 50 or 60 feet away, and vanishes forever. It seemed inconceivable she could have wandered off without being seen or heard. The forest on either side was a tangled mess, slow and noisy to push through. I walked to the bend where she was last seen. Then, I stepped off the trail into the woods. The ground was soft, covered in a thick carpet of pine needles that muffled all sound. Thorny bushes clawed at me. An 8-year-old could not have moved through here quickly or quietly. Then I noticed them. Patches of wild huckleberries. A strange, recurring detail in many missing 411 cases. I spent 2 hours conducting a small-scale grid search. I found nothing. No scrap of cloth, no footprint. It was, as the report stated, pristine. Too pristine. As I headed back to the trail, I felt it again. The prickling on my neck, the certainty of being watched. I froze and listened. The forest was utterly silent. Then I heard a single, sharp snap of a twig uphill. I peered through the leaves and saw him. It was the older ranger from the visitor center. He stood 70 yards away, partially concealed by a cedar tree. He wore a drab gray jacket, blending almost perfectly with the shadows. He wasn't hiking or patrolling. He was just standing there, motionless, looking in my general direction. He held binoculars but wasn't using them. My blood ran cold. This was no coincidence. He had followed me, watching my every move. How long had he been there? I ducked back behind the fern, my mind racing. Confront him? Pretend I hadn't seen him? This was no longer subtle intimidation. This was a clear message. We are watching you. You are in our territory. We can get to you whenever we want. I stayed hidden for what felt like an eternity. When I risked another look, he was gone, vanished as silently as he had appeared. I scrambled back to the trail, the park's beauty replaced by a profound menace. Every shadow looked like a figure. I almost jogged back to the safety of the parking lot. But I knew I wasn't safe at all. I had crossed a line, and the man in the gray jacket had shown me how far they would go to protect it. The encounter changed everything. My investigation was now a present-day confrontation. Back in my cabin, I locked the doors and drew the curtains. I needed a new strategy. Walking the trails was fruitless and dangerous. I had to focus on the paper trail. For 3 days, I was glued to my laptop, looking for inconsistencies in the official response. And I found them. First, a matter of timing. The initial call was logged at 2:48 p.m. The first ranger was on scene at 3:19 p.m. remarkably fast. The crack was in the K9 report. The search dog unit was requested at 3:30 p.m. but wasn't dispatched from their base 60 miles away until 5:45 p.m. Over 2 hours later, a critical window of daylight lost. The report gives no reason. Second, a geographical inconsistency. I pulled up the search map. Sector 7B, a rugged area with ravines and boulder fields a mile north of the trail, was marked cleared day 2, but the team assigned to 7B had been redirected halfway through their search. Their log states, retasked to Sector 4C by order of Ranger Thompson. Ranger Thompson. The name leaped off the page. I searched the personnel roster. Thompson, Michael. Age, 58. He was the operations chief for the search. He was the one giving the orders. And I was almost certain he was the man in the gray jacket. He had deliberately pulled a search team from a logical area where a lost child might have wandered. Why? The record offered no explanation. I couldn't get answers from the Park Service. I needed someone who used to be on the inside. My research gave me a name, Jacob Miller, a retired county search and rescue volunteer. He had been part of the initial search for Sarah. He had retired abruptly a few months later. It was a long shot. It took a day to find a phone number. A gruff, wary voice answered. Mr. Miller? My name is Alex. I'm an independent journalist doing a piece on the search for Sarah Carpenter. A long silence. Who'd you say you were again? My name is Alex. I run an investigative journal online. I don't talk to reporters, he said flatly. And I don't talk about that search. Not ever. He was about to hang up. Mr. Miller, wait, I said urgently. The Park Service is stonewalling me. I was on the Eagle Peak Trail, and I think one of their senior rangers was following me. Sector 7B, why was the search team pulled out? The silence stretched on. Then a low sigh. You don't know what you're getting into, son, he said, his voice a near whisper. You need to pack your things and leave. Just drop it. I can't, I replied. What are they so afraid of? Another pause. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the diner in Oak Ridge. Come alone. Don't bring any cameras. And don't tell a soul. The next day, I drove to Oak Ridge, a sleepy logging town. I was an hour early, parking down the street to watch. At 5 to noon, an old pickup truck pulled in. A man matching Miller's description got out, tall, gaunt, with tired eyes. He scanned the lot before going inside. I followed him in. He was in a booth in the far corner, back to the wall. You're late, he grumbled as I slid in. I had to be sure, I said. We ordered coffee and waited for the waitress to leave. You mentioned Ranger Thompson, Miller said, his voice low. Don't ever say that name out loud around here. He followed me, I said. He's the one who pulled the team from Sector 7B. Miller's hands trembled slightly. Thompson, he runs that park like his own kingdom. When that girl went missing, he took charge. But it was strange. Strange how? I prompted. The whole feel was wrong, Miller said, looking out the window. Usually, a search is urgent cooperation. With Thompson, it felt like he was managing our search not to find her, but to steer it. He kept us going over the same ground, easy, useless work. And Sector 7B? Miller's eyes met mine. A couple of my guys found a track up there. A small one. Looked like a kid's sneaker print heading into that boulder field. They called it in, excited. 10 minutes later, Thompson is on the radio, personally ordering them out. Their priority tasking? A line search through a meadow. A complete waste of time. Did they ever go back to 7B? He shook his head. No. By the next day, the feds were in charge, and that whole area was declared geologically unstable and off-limits. Unstable? Those rocks haven't moved in 1,000 years. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. The day after I quit the team, I drove out there on my own. I had to see. I got to the edge of 7B, near that boulder field. And Thompson was there. Just him and one other ranger. They weren't searching. They were cleaning. They had brushes, and they were scrubbing the surfaces of the rocks. My blood went cold. Scrubbing the rocks? Why? Miller shook his head, a haunted look on his face. I don't know, son. I got out of there before they saw me. I went home and never went back. Some things you're not meant to understand. He looked at me with fear and pity. You're stirring up something that wants to be left alone. This isn't just a cover-up. It's something else. Something older. And Thompson and his people, they're not park rangers. Not really. They're keepers. Guardians. And they're not protecting the park from the people. They're protecting the people from the park. He threw a few dollars on the table and stood up. Go home, kid, he said. Forget you ever heard the name Sarah Carpenter. Because they're watching you now. And they don't let go. He walked out, leaving me with his chilling words. Guardians? Sounded mad. But I had seen the man in the gray jacket, seen the blank spaces in the reports. I knew with terrifying certainty Jacob Miller wasn't crazy. Jacob Miller's story haunted me. They were scrubbing the rocks. The image was a key to a door I was terrified to open. His warning echoed, but my journalistic instinct was louder. I couldn't leave. The inconsistencies, the stalking, and Miller's account all pointed to Sector 7B. Going back was an incredible risk. I had to be invisible. I spent a day and a half planning. I would park on a public road outside the park's boundary and hike nearly 6 miles overland, through untracked wilderness, to approach the boulder field from the opposite direction. I would have to do most of it in the dark. I went on the third night after midnight. Dressed in dark clothing, I carried only essentials, using a headlamp with a red light function. The drive was nerve-wracking. I parked my car in an overgrown turnout and stepped into absolute silence and blackness. The hike was brutal, navigating by compass and GPS through thickets and steep inclines. The forest at night is a different world. It took nearly 4 hours to cover the 6 miles. Finally, my GPS showed I was approaching the boulder field. I switched off my headlamp. The trees thinned, and I saw it. A vast, chaotic jumble of colossal granite boulders strewn across a barren hillside. It was a stark, silent city of stone. This was Sector 7B. I moved slowly, my boots silent on the rock. The air was still and cold. Miller was right. There was a sense of ancient permanence here. I began my search, not knowing what I was looking for. I moved deeper into the maze of stone. After an hour of fruitless searching, despair set in. Maybe I was crazy. As I was about to turn back, my light caught a patch of rock that was different. I knelt. It was a flat, horizontal surface on a large boulder. The surrounding granite was rough, covered in lichen. But this one patch, about 3 feet square, was smooth, almost polished. A darker shade of gray, as if it had been scoured, scrubbed. Miller was telling the truth. This was the spot. But why? I ran my fingers over the cold, smooth surface. I scanned the area around it with my flashlight. And then I saw it. Tucked deep into a narrow fissure at the base of the boulder was a small object. It was wedged in tightly. I used my multi-tools pliers and carefully worked it free. I pulled it into my flashlight beam. My breath caught. It was a small, plastic figurine. A little unicorn with a rainbow-colored mane and tail, faded and dirty. I had seen it in the case file. It was Sarah Carpenter's favorite toy, the one she was holding the day she vanished. They hadn't found it because they hadn't searched here. No, they had. They found the track. They came here, and they hadn't reported it. They scrubbed the rock and hid the evidence. Why hide the one piece of evidence that proved Sarah had been here? This wasn't incompetence. The stalking, the intimidation, the meticulous cleaning, this was a deliberate concealment of the truth. They weren't hiding that she was here. They were hiding what happened to her here. I stood up, the unicorn in my trembling hand. I suddenly felt, with a primal terror, that I was not standing on a place of disappearance. I was standing on a place of sacrifice. Then a sound, the crunch of a boot on gravel. From the darkness behind me, I spun around. A figure was standing at the edge of the boulder field, 20 yards away, a tall silhouette. It was Ranger Thompson. He was in his full, crisp uniform. He looked like a statue. He wasn't holding a flashlight. "You should not have come here," he said. His voice was calm, quiet, filled with a terrifying, ancient sadness. "What did you do?" I stammered. "What happened to her?" He took a slow step forward. "You journalists," he said, his voice resonating in the silent air. "You come with your cameras and questions, thinking the world is simple. You think this is a park. You have no idea what it really is." Another step. He was closer. "This is a preserve," he continued, his voice low and hypnotic. "And we are the keepers. We maintain the balance. For thousands of years there has been an understanding, an arrangement. Sometimes the wilderness calls for something. And to keep the peace, To protect the thousands who come here in blissful ignorance, a price must be paid. My mind recoiled. A price? I whispered. You're saying you let it happen? You sacrificed a child. He stopped, just feet away. I could see the profound weariness in his eyes. We don't choose, he said, a bare whisper. We don't decide. We are just the stewards of the transaction. We clean up. We maintain the silence. We keep the great, sleeping things of this world from waking. You have found a toy. I have found an intruder who has broken the pact. He raised a hand, holding a radio. The gesture was more menacing than any gun. You have two choices, Thompson said, his voice devoid of emotion. You can leave that toy where you found it, walk away, forget everything you have seen and heard, and never return. Or you can become part of the story you are so desperate to report. The choice hung in the cold air. The truth, in all its monstrous horror, laid bare. He wasn't a park ranger. He was a priest of some ancient, terrible religion, and I had desecrated his altar. I looked at the unicorn, then at the keeper's dark face. My investigation was over. My survival was beginning. Time stretched. My rational instincts screamed to document, to expose. But the animal part of my brain screamed to flee. Become part of the story was a threat of being erased, of becoming another missing 411 case. My hand shook. Thompson's eyes were on me, patient. Slowly I crouched down, with a feeling of profound self-loathing, a sense that I was betraying Sarah. I placed the unicorn back into the crack, pushing it deep inside until it was gone. I looked up. Thompson gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Acknowledgement. Go, he said. The word was flat, final. Walk east. Do not turn back. Do not stop until you are out of the park's boundaries. Your car is where you left it. Forget this place. He turned towards the deeper part of the boulder field, as if his work was not yet done. I scrambled to my feet and started moving, stumbling over the rocks, away from him. I walked fast, heading east into the darkness. I did not look back, terrified of what I might see. The 6-mile hike back was a journey through hell. Every sound was no longer a ranger but something else. The great, sleeping things. The forest was a living, breathing entity, and I had been inside its gullet and spat back out. I have never felt so hunted. When I finally reached the dirt road, I almost collapsed. My car was there, untouched. I threw myself inside and locked the doors. I sat in the dark, just breathing. The silence outside was hungry. I started the car and drove carefully until I hit the paved county highway. The yellow lines were the most beautiful things I had ever seen, a promise of a world that made sense. I didn't go back to the cabin. It was his territory. I drove through the night, south, away from Ironwood National Park. As the sun rose, I crossed the state line. I stopped at a generic motel hundreds of miles away, checked in under a false name, and paid cash. I stood in the shower for an hour, trying to wash off the feeling of the forest, the cold of the rock, the weight of Thompson's gaze. It's inside me now, a cold knot of terror and knowledge. They weren't tailing me to stop me from finding a story of incompetence. They were tailing me for my own safety, to keep me from a truth that protects the fragile veil of our reality. Jacob Miller was right. They are keepers, engaged in a terrible, ongoing negotiation with the darkness. And sometimes, to keep that darkness from spilling out, they have to feed it. I am recording this 2 weeks later. I haven't been home. I don't know if Thompson's reach extends beyond his park. My rational mind says that's impossible. But my rational mind also says what I experienced was impossible. I have no evidence. The unicorn is in its tomb. My word is all I have. What is missing 411? I thought it was a puzzle. I came out believing it's a wound in the fabric of the world. I failed Sarah Carpenter. I looked the truth in the eye, and I blinked. I chose to live. I will carry that choice for the rest of my days. I don't know what I'll do next, but I can't stop. This experience has opened my eyes. This isn't just one park. These patterns repeat. My investigation has changed. It's no longer just about finding the missing. It's about understanding the silence. Thank you for listening. The world is not as safe as we think, and sometimes the monsters are real. They just wear uniforms and tell you they're here to help. Stay safe, and be careful in the woods. They're deeper and darker than you know.